Erev Tov, Hod HaSharon. Good morning in Columbus, Ohio. Greetings to our friends of Israel from around the United States, around Israel, around the world. My name's Wayne Firestone. It's so great to be with you for this program. We've been doing this now together, some of us for almost 3 years. We always like to begin the webinar with a little bit of a community building moment. And I'm going to ask, what's on your reading list? So put something into the chat. Let us know what you're reading. It could be fiction. It could be nonfiction. It could be that thing we used to read called a newspaper. It could be something you're reading on your tablet. Let us know what your favorite book is that you're hoping to get to. And if you need a suggestion, our featured panelist today has actually authored or co-authored 4 books. I'm going to suggest the last one, Case for Democracy, the Power of Freedom and to Overcome Tyranny and Terror. It feels like a pretty timely and timeless book. We'll be hearing about that and more in just a moment. I'm seeing The Covenant of Water. I'm seeing Dara Horn's book. Lots of great suggestions. Give each other a little bit of crowdsource while we're introducing our panelists in the room in Jerusalem today. I'm so excited. We have a robust delegation from what we like to do at America-Israel Friendship League is bring people to Israel and let them meet Israel and Israelis themselves and come back and talk about it. We've been doing these delegations for over 50 years. Indeed, today we have legislators from the National Conference of State Legislatures from all over the United States that have been touring and visiting and then they will come back to their respective states and districts just in time for Independence Day weekend celebrations to share a little bit about what they've done over the past week. We're beginning first. We've got a whole group, but the group did a lottery, and the winner today is State Senator Whitney Westerfield from the great state of Kentucky, where he's the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. Will give us a welcome on behalf of the delegation.
Thank you so much. First lottery I've ever won in my life. And by the way, I'm reading The Anxiety Opportunity by Curtis Chang. Since I can't put that in the chat, I'll let you know what I'm reading. I'm Whitney Westerfield from the great Commonwealth of Kentucky, and I'm the Senate Judiciary Chairman there. I've been in the Senate for 11 years. And I'm here along with my colleagues from 8 different states around the country to speak with you all today and with our listeners here on the webinar. And we're all members of the National Conference of State Legislatures. As you mentioned, NCSL is a national organization that represents all state legislators in the country, a little over 7,000 of us from one end of the nation to the other. And we here in this group are from all parties and all parts of the country, north, south, east, west, left politically and right politically. But we all share what I think I can say when I speak on behalf of the group here, a profound experience just over the last few days. As you talked about the importance of these exchanges and bringing these delegations here, I can say with my own personal opinion, it's been a profound experience to see your way of life, to see the way of life of all Israelis, and to see the pressures that you have to deal with, the conflict internally and externally, existential and domestic, all of the things that work together to make the struggle for Israel very real and very palpable for me as I've been here now for several days. It's been a life-changing experience, and I'm grateful for the opportunity. And I know I speak for the rest of my colleagues here around the table, and certainly all those over the last 50 years of delegations that you've brought people from America here. The ones that I've talked to and the ones that I'll talk to after this that haven't yet come on delegations. It's been a special opportunity, and I'm thankful for it. And we extend our thanks on behalf of each of us and NCSL.
Thank you so much, Senator Westerfield. A great kickoff. I'm now going to move over just on the other corner of the table to my colleague Yigal Nessel. He is the COO of Combat Antisemitism Movement. He's a Tel Aviv University law school graduate. He also knows a thing or two about American law, got a master's at Berkeley in California. He's practiced law in Israel, and now in his role as COO of CAM. That's the brief name that we'll give, so it's not a mouthful each time. Yigal, tell us a little bit about the organization and what we're going to do today with the chairman of your advisory board sitting next to you.
So first of all, thank you very much for having us here. It's a great honor to be in this webinar. So the Combat Antisemitism Movement, CAM, was founded in 2019. And the main reason for the establishment of CAM was to create an interfaith coalition around the world, a global organization that can put everybody together, all the organizations that are fighting against anti-Semitism, and create a one united voice against the most hated, the oldest hated in the world, and that's anti-Semitism. Now in CAM, our projects are divided to 5 pillars. The first pillar is partnership. We believe truly in partnership with so many organizations. We have more than 740 organizations around the world. More than 2 million people are doing partnership with us to fight anti-Semitism. For example, we had just recently a mayor summit in Athens, in Greece, with 26 mayors around the world, including New York mayor, who came all the way specially to this summit for 2 days and went back just to learn and get educated about how can he bring back to his community, to his people who works in his city, how to fight anti-Semitism. And we're doing one more in Dortmund in Germany this coming November. The second pillar that we do is we are fighting in the social media. We are partnering with organizations and how to spot haters in the social media. And we all know how that is very important. The third pillar that we do, we go to the grassroots. So above the organizations and leaders that we do a lot of work with, we also understand that we need to go to the people everywhere in the world who suffer from anti-Semitism. For example, we just did, and we're doing a new project called Innovation Lab in the interfaith world, where we call every single person that wants to do a project against anti-Semitism to join us. And the fourth pillar that we do is diplomacy. As you all know, the IRA definition is super important, and CAM is in the roots. We are defending the IRA definition all around the world. For now, we have more than 40 countries who adopted the IRA definition. We have 31 US states and 56 cities around US that are just now defended and adopted the IRA definition. Including that, we are also in the US, we're adopting JAM, the Jewish American Heritage Month, that you all know it's very important for the Jewish communities around the world in US, but especially to encourage municipalities, cities, states to include in their program as well the fighting against anti-Semitism. And we have, of course, our fifth one, that is the research. The research that we do, and you know how important it is, we are doing partnership with different research organizations to really see where are the hate coming from all around the world. Doesn't matter where you go in the world, you will find people, organizations that encourage anti-Semitism, and we want to see exactly where it comes from. So this is in a nutshell about our work in CAM, and we really invite you all to go to our website, Combat Antisemitism Movement, sign up to our newsletter, and be a partner with us to fight against anti-Semitism. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yigal. We have people calling in really from all over today that are on this webinar, from Jacksonville, Florida, from Santa Fe, from Vancouver, from Hadassah Hospital, where somebody called in to say that Natan Sharansky is her personal hero. So I think it's always fun when you're introducing Natan to a group of people who love him and know him from many years of activism. I won't read his whole resume because he would just sort of start frowning and say, let's get on with the business.
Let's keep it. No, let's keep it.
What I will share, I'll share a couple of highlights maybe that one might not know. First of all, he was born in Donetsk, Ukraine. He is one of the people who gets to claim that when he decided to move to Israel, or what we call make Aliyah, the response was to throw him in jail. And from jail, he went on to lead the Refusnik and be a spokesperson for the dissident movement during the Soviet period, and famously went on not only to make Aliyah, but to then become a minister and deputy prime minister in 4 successive governments in Israel. And then later become the chairman of the Sochnut, the Jewish agency. He's won the Israel Prize. He's won the Presidential Freedom Prize, the Congressional Prize. He has many, many honors. When I had the distinct honor to bring him to a number of college campuses to tour and share one of his books a number of years ago, we took a lot of precautions to make sure it was a good trip, to make sure he had something warm to drink before he spoke. And one of those famous visits at Rutgers University, one of the graduate students threw a pie in his face. So Natan, the only thing I'll say at this point about this particular encounter is that I'm pretty sure no one's going to throw a pie in your face in the room in Jerusalem, and certainly not over the not over the webinar today. But as always, I know you welcome conversation and dialogue with everyone and anyone, and have graciously offered to answer any and all questions. I don't know if we'll get to all of them, but I do want to give you an opportunity, to talk about the big issues of the day, and in light of events in Russia last week, in light of the spikes in almost daily and weekly anti-Semitic incidents that we see in the United States and around the world. I guess my question is, what's keeping you up at night, Natan, after everything sort of that we've been through and you've been through? What are the things that concern you the most now?
Well, what concerns me most is my grandchildren. And after all those years that we were afraid, when I was afraid that we will never have children, now to have 8 grandchildren, it's great. So you're concerned in what kind of world they live. But going back to the pie, I have to say it was okay. It was kosher pie and it was very tasty. so it's no complaints. So dear friends, as you heard, I was born in 1948 in the city of Donetsk, which then was called Stalino, which today is in the center of the conflict. Not conflict between Russia and Ukraine, but barbaric aggression of Russia against Ukraine. And then it was in 1948 when I was born, and in the years to come where I grew there, if somebody will ask me then, make a guess, the next war will be or between Russia and Ukraine, or between the inhabitants of Earth and from other planets, I would not even have to think for a moment. I said, of course, between the inhabitants of the Earth and other planets, because to imagine that this Soviet empire or the brotherhood of people, where voluntary unification of Ukraine and Russia 300 years before was celebrated almost every day in all possible ways. And so it's absolutely unimaginable. But in fact, there were more than 100 nations, and in the idea of your parents, there is fifth line is nationality. There were more than 100 different nationalities. And it didn't really matter because no national life was encouraged. But if it was written Jew, it didn't matter, because I grew as other Jews there, having absolutely nothing Jewish, zero, no language, no religion, no tradition, no Brit Milah, no Bar Mitzvah, nothing. But we knew very well that we were Jewish because there was a lot of anti-Semitism. The moment it is written Jew in the ID of your parents, there is a lot of restrictions, a lot of conversations at home, what kind of career you can do and you cannot do, what kind of doors will be closed for you, what are the dangers of the life as a Jew, all the time. Without the word Jew didn't have any positive meaning. It's only meant that you are born with kind of disease, which is called Jew, and you have to learn how to adjust yourself to it, how to survive, what kind of medicine to take to survive with this disease. And the medicine was clear. Parents were explaining, you're a Jew, that's why you have to be number one in physics or mathematics or music, doesn't matter anymore. But professional success, that's what can help you to survive in spite of being Jewish. So you're really living without identity, knowing only that you have to suffer for this kind of prejudice. And of course, you are living also without freedom. It was the biggest dictatorship in the world. Well, Putin tries to rebuild it again, but still, it's a long way to go. But the dictatorship controlled 1/3 of the world, which killed tens of millions of its own citizens in order to have full control over the brains of these people. And you knew from the age of 5, I was 5 when Stalin died, and my father explained to me that that's great for us Jews. We are in big danger, but probably that's, remember all your life that in the moment of big, big danger, miracle happened, Stalin died. But don't say it to anybody and do what everybody does. And they go back to my kindergarten and they cry together with all the children about the death of Stalin. And we are singing songs about the son of all the people, Stalin. And they know that I should be very happy, miracle happened, Stalin died. And they have no idea how many children are really crying and how many are crying like me. And that's typical Soviet life. When you are doing what you're supposed to do, when you're saying what everybody has to say, when you're politically correct in the communist meeting of this world, and you know that all this lie. But the truth can be only for your family. So that's how you're growing without freedom and without identity. And you're not even thinking to fight for your freedom. Though it's very uncomfortable to live with this double think with self-censorship. But you're not thinking about that you may be confined because there are no values except of the value of survival. To be number one in physics and survive. And then it changed in 1967 when it was 6-day war, and Israel, whether you want or not, entered in a very powerful way in our life because people around you, all of them, they hate you, they love you, but they look at you and say, how you Jews did it. And you're afraid, what they think I'm not loyal Soviet citizen, what means I did it. Well, what I did, I know as little about Israel as you know. But then you understand whether you want to know it, but the world connects you to Israel anyway. You want to understand what it means. And that's how we started, in fact, in the underground, to learn about ourselves from the books, by the way, which were brought mainly by American Jewish tourists. And suddenly you recognize that with some switch in your mind, you can be part of the history, which starts not from Bolshevik Revolution, 1917, with all the awful things, but it starts from Exodus from Egypt. And it's so interesting, so exciting. And it can be all yours if only you'll decide. And then you'll find out that there are Jews from all over the world who are coming from Miami, from Kentucky, from London, from Sydney, from Toronto. They say, oh, your father is from Odessa, and my father is from Odessa. We have family, we want to help. You find out that all of them are from Odessa. And I am from Donetsk, but my father is from Odessa. And that they say that they are family. So it's up to you decide, you accept, your son have a big family. You're not lonely fighting for how to overcome antisemitism. And you discover that there is a state of Israel, which is ready to send airplanes to the end of the world, but to help you. So that's when you start discover your identity. And that's when you start find that you have strength to fight for your rights, also to say what you think. And say, I don't really want to live in this country. I want to live in Israel. The moment you say it, that's the end of your career, that your house will be searched, will be called for KGB interrogations, but suddenly you can speak freely your mind. And then it's big relief. And that gives you strength to fight for your rights, for rights of other Jews, for rights of everyone. So to make long story short, in a few years, I was the activist and the spokesman of two movements, human rights movement and Jewish movement in the Soviet Union. And then I was arrested, accused in high treason and being American spy, spent 9 years in prison. And then for a change, after being released, spent 9 years in the Israeli government, to be able to compare. By the way, I have to say that the life in the government is much more challenging because the life in prison is, of course, physically difficult. They had hundreds of days in a punishing cell, many years in solitary confinement. But it's such a simple life. Here is black, here is white, here are enemies, here are friends. You say no to KGB every day, and you fulfilled all your obligation. We Jews have very tough demands from God. 613 obligations. Can you imagine somebody's following 613 commandments? But there in prison, so simple. You say no to KGB. With this, you did everything what you could do to your people and to yourself. And that's it. Well, in the government, you can never know where is black and where is white. It's all built on compromises. You can never know so clearly where you cross the line between good compromise and bad compromise. So it's a different story. But here the question is how it is that the Soviet Union, which killed 20 million of its citizens to have full control, and here is a group of Jews said that they want to live for Israel, and they didn't finish it simply. We were so successful in our struggle only because from the very beginning it was the struggle of all the Jewish world. And that's why so many Jews to this day are telling me all the time, oh, we were demonstrating for you. It was really the struggle of all the Jews of the world. And they were leaders in the free world who understood very early that you cannot pacify dictator. You really have to link the situation with human rights inside with international policy. And whenever I'm asked who are those who deserve the most credit for bringing down the Soviet Union, I mentioned my mentor, Andrei Sakharov, #1 dissident, and I mentioned Senator Jackson, and I mentioned Democratic Senator Scoop Jackson, and I mentioned President Reagan, because these were people who understood very early that just America almost signed already free trade agreement, this President Nixon and Secretary of State Kissinger, policy of detente. We have to have a good trade, and then we have good relations, and then we can influence. And we dissidents in Soviet Union were absolutely against it. And then just at the moment when already free trade almost started, came Senator Jackson and said, without free immigration, there will be no free trade. A so-called Jackson-Vanik Amendment, if you don't remember, you should look. It was the first piece of legislation in the free world which linked human rights in the Soviet Union with the international relations. And then, of course, came President Reagan, who called Soviet Union evil empire. That was for us, for Soviet dissidents in prison, like the greatest day, that finally somebody called Soviet Union by its name. And he was so sure, later when I was released, I was meeting President Reagan many times, he was so sure that people will throw away this communist to the dustbin of history, because simply the regime which takes away all the basic rights and then will be hated by its own people. And he gave all the trust in the desire of people to be free, whether it is people in Russia or in Poland or in China. And his policy of clear linkage between his, by the way, Margaret Thatcher policy was something that we really felt the influence. And then when the new leader came, and Gorbachev, and he needed very much to have good relations with America to save Soviet economy. President Reagan made it very clear to him that without changing the policy towards immigration and human rights, it was impossible. I was the first political prisoner who was released by Gorbachev, then one after the others, freedom of immigration, and then without Iron Curtain, Soviet Union couldn't exist, and it fell apart. So you have to understand that today, when there are so many debates again how to pacify this dictator or that dictator, only globally connecting the question of basic human rights and international policy, we really can defeat it. Now I want to speak a little bit about the question of combating anti-Semitism. Look, just recently, Biden administration published a plan how to combat anti-Semitism, and I have to say it's a very good plan. For the first time, you have what this ministry has to do, or this minister has to do, what has to be done in terms of education, was in terms of police monitoring this. It's the most detailed plan of combating anti-Semitism which exists until now, and those who are involved, they deserve a lot of credit. There is one paragraph which looks like very normal paragraph, which is of concern. And that's paragraph which says that, of course, our main definition is IRA definition, and we accept it, but there are also other definitions which are also should be respected. And you have,
I'll just say for the public and people who doesn't know what IRA stands for, it's International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. So look into it, website. It's very important that you learn what it is.
okay, but what is important for us, so why should anybody object to the fact that there are some very good other definitions? The thing is that that is the only definitions which links all new antisemitism and new antisemitism, what we call the hatred towards Jews and the hatred towards Jewish state, demonization and delegitimization and double standard of Jews, that are the main tools of antisemitism for 1,000 years, and demonization and double standard and the legitimization of Jewish state. In the Soviet Union, from where I come, there was no need to prove that it's connected. Everybody knew, everybody in the street knew that the moment there is new campaign, new campaign against Israel, against Zionist puppet of American imperialism, Jews should be concerned. Even Jews who knew nothing about Israel, who don't know what Zionism means, but that's against them. And vice versa. The moment there is another campaign against cosmopolites, this that's another synonym of Jews, those people who are here who don't like their motherland and so on, it means that a new attack on Israel is a propagandistic attack. So it went together. But it was clear for people like me that it's all because of the dictatorship, that dictator always needs enemy, internal, external. Like today, Putin became a dictator, so he needed enemy, inside and outside. And Jews and Israel are the ideal scapegoat, or which is uniting their own base. In the free world, it was clear to me that it's impossible. And I'm now, in the 2000, I'm the minister responsible, among other things, for anti-Semitism. And here is Durban Conference, the first United Nations conference against global racism. It was prepared for 3 years, and Durban because of South Africa. And the only conclusion about it, that Israel is the South Africa of today, and we have to fight apartheid of Israel. And from where it comes, it's the only democratic country. And then come some important public figure of Europe to Israel and says, I went to Palestinian refugee camp. That's Auschwitz of today. Because I was many times in refugee camps. It's a big shame that 5th generation of Palestinians are in refugee camps, and we can debate who has to be blamed about it, but all it has to do with Auschwitz. And of course, United Nations, they come to United Nations Human Rights Committee, and the only permanent topic on the agenda is Israel, and it's condemned for violation of human rights more than all the dictators in the world together. You have to understand this. It's clear double standard. So I say we are fully for criticism of Israel. This is legitimate, even not, it doesn't matter. Every democratic country has to be under permanent criticism of the politicians, of the public, of the, well, look, today in Israel, the one who is not criticizing from one side or the other will not survive for one day in politics. But when there is clear demonization or clear double standard, clear delegitimization of the state, that's anti-Semitism today. That's when I proposed 20 years ago 3Ds. And ladies, we look at this IRA definition, that's exactly, they're not working through formula, they're working through examples, but they give examples when criticism of Israel turns into anti-Semitism. That's exactly this. And today, when we have rise of anti-Semitism on the left and right, against Jews and against the Jewish state, you cannot really fight anti-Semitism if you're not doing it on all the fronts together, simultaneously. Because otherwise, it simply will move from one corner to the other. And that's why it's so important to have one definition. That's why it's important that people on the left will fight anti-Semitism on the left, and people on the right will fight anti-Semitism on the right. That it's not simply political debate when one accuses the other. I can remind you this famous debate between Biden and Trump. And when Trump explains why the real anti-Semitism on the left, it's Anafa, whatever. And Biden explained that the real anti-Semitism is these Proud Boys, how it's called. So it's very easy for each of them to say that anti-Semitism on the other side. But you cannot really be successful if you will not fight anti-Semitism in your own camp. If you don't have one definition which unites this, because anti-Semitism, fighting anti-Semitism, it's not about fighting against right or against left. It's how we together overcome this or hatred. That's why the will come, in fact, goes from one state to the other state. State in American or states in Latin America or in Europe or in the Balkans, and from one university to the other. Big center of modern anti-Semitism, of course, is American campuses, and trying to broaden this one platform, anti-Semitism. Well, I have another 5 minutes, or we'll go to the questions.
Moderator.
To the moderator, please. Okay.
Okay, Natan, you started by talking about your surprise in thinking about the war between Ukraine and Russia. In the past, in the period since the war has commenced, and certainly just in light of the events of even just this past week, which were shocking to many, of the armed insurrection, do you have a sense of the Jewish community in Russia, how Jews are thinking about their own security and safety, and whether Aliyah is, do you think there is a prospect of large-scale Aliyah from Russia or from the region if this continues?
Well, first of all, this Russian aggression is a very tragic, dramatic and tragic page of modern European and world history. I, from the very first day of the war, said that it's the war against all the free world and against the principles on which the free world today is run. And that's why all the countries, including Israel, have to be absolutely clearly on the side of Ukraine. I have to say that Putin hoped, first of all, he thought that Ukrainians will not fight back because they are not real, they are a fake nation, they belong to Russian Empire. Second, he thought that the free world will be scared. And seemed in the beginning, he was wrong about Ukraine, he was wrong about his own army, he didn't understand how big and corrupt it is. But it seemed that he will be right about the West because he tried to frighten with the nuclear weapons, and at least in the first weeks, it seemed that the West gives up. And I remember when he organized the test of nuclear weapons 3 days before the war, and said those who stand on our way will face such a blow that they never saw in history. And the Americans, 2 days after the war started, canceled their test of Minutemen, which was scheduled once in a year. And here they're canceling, and they say, in order not to be responsible for increase of tension. So Russians are bringing the threat, and Americans are, then I called to Ambassador here and the people in Washington and said, are you crazy? Or simply like encouraging Putin that he has a free hand. I have to say, I was then the first weeks in Washington. I was really surprised how the conversation is, whether Putin will be irritated if he'll have weapons shooting for 20 miles or for 30 miles. So maybe it shall stop in order not to irritate him. I have to say it's all behind us, the free world, very quickly, I have to say, and Biden administration, Senate, Congress, Germany, France, they changed their policy, they overcame their fear, and they do, and that's now a real resistance. And I also said a year ago that I believe the scenario can be that if Ukraine will have 2 or 3 more victories, because definitely its moral is much higher, the price is high, then at the moment Putin will look weak dictator in the eyes of his own army, he will be overthrown. When I said a year ago, it seemed like absolutely crazy thing. Just in the last 72 hours, we can see that Putin, whatever are the reasons behind, and I believe that behind all what happened are money, but one thing is clear, Putin at this moment looks as a weak dictator in the eyes of his own army, and that can have consequences. As to the Jews, though it is very difficult for us Jews to believe that any major conflict will be not because of Jews, this conflict is not because of Jews. In fact, Putin is an awful dictator and war criminal, but he is not anti-Semite. And Zelensky is not neo-Nazi, but a great hero of Ukrainian people and Jewish people. It's not about Jews, but Jews in Ukraine, of course, suffer as all the others, and many of their communities are half destroyed, and as a result, some of them are refugees and some of them are coming to Israel. But on every Jew who's coming from Ukraine, there are at least 4 Jews, and now it's coming closer to the 10 Jews who are coming from Russia. And because Jews are afraid in Russia that Iron Curtain is coming back. Not like every person should be concerned, but of course Jews are more sensitive to this, that in the last year, all the human rights organizations were forbidden, all those remnants of free press and free TV and even sites on the internet, all of them were prohibited. Many of the dissidents find themselves in prison. There are still only 2 differences from what was in my years. You can have, in prison, you can have a lawyer, and some of famous prisons like Navalny or Karamurza, through their lawyers sending me letters, and I can answer them. That didn't exist in the past. You're absolutely isolated from the world. And there still is the freedom of immigration. And nobody knows how long it will be. And that's why, I think already 75,000 Jews from Russia came to Israel. And I believe in you what's happening, another 100,000 probably will come. In the meantime, of course, the Jewish communities, well, I have to say, like all the others in Russia, under the increasing pressure to express solidarity with the actions of Putin. And of course, they are very much against. So double thing is coming back. And I think the Aliyah from Russia will grow even bigger than it is now. If 70,000 came, another 100,000, I think, will come for sure. And well, it makes some challenges for Israel. We have to simplify our bureaucracy. In the times of the war, you have to work much more in a much more simple and quick ways than when there is no war. But yes, that's the challenge. But that's the challenge that Israel knows how to deal with. The other question is about Israeli policy towards Ukraine, but that's another topic. Yeah.
Well, those are quite remarkable numbers to think about on a number of different levels. We have a question from Wendy who wants to know whether you've had personal conversations and meetings with Zelensky. She notes that both two Ukrainian men who have stood up to autocrats at different times in their lives and have a good sense of humor.
Well, for Zelensky, it's his profession. Yeah, well, he, as you probably know, he had serial films, how he's becoming, from the teacher in school, he's becoming a president of Ukraine. It was very funny, and we enjoyed watching it in Ukrainian, thanks to Netflix and all this. But then he really became a president, and I'm in one of my other heads. I am the chairman of the Babi Yar Memorial Center. So another interesting story. Babi Yar is the biggest grave of Holocaust, but also the biggest symbol of the efforts of Soviet Union to erase Holocaust. And now we want to turn it into the biggest center for study of Holocaust. And so on the 80th anniversary of Babi Yar, we had a great ceremony in Kyiv. It was like 4 months before the war. Nobody knew that there would be war. And I came with my wife, and we met again Zelensky, and there was President of Ukraine was speaking, President of Germany was speaking, President of Israel was speaking, and myself as the host of the event. And then we had an opportunity to talk to Zelensky, and my wife said, you know, he's doing almost as well as he does it in the film. And, you know, they talked, it's really funny, and you could never imagine that in a few months he will bring this role to the international stage. And I believe, I was just saying how the world changed its attitudes. I think his leadership played the main role in this changing. And he was not hesitant to say, we are fighting for you. Why you're not giving us money? Money, of course, but weapons. We don't ask you to give your soldiers, give us weapons. He did it very well. And then, yeah, in the middle of the war, he went there, and I did meet President Zelensky just at the time when there was almost no electricity in his palace because it's just the time when Russia started destroying infrastructure. They understood they cannot win in any direct encounter. Really, it's this is how they couldn't stand any confrontation. Even when Ukraine didn't have modern weapons, they couldn't. So they started destroying the infrastructure. And well, he's a great leader, what I can tell you. Yeah, his humor was more like Jewish humor than, you know, grim humor, when you're trying to joke on your own problem. Yeah, Jews are very good in this. Yeah, but with the time we created Israel, so we decided we were not only good to make jokes of our unhappiness, but also how to fight to be happy. So he has both sides together. Well, we had also some tough points because of his disappointment of some policies of Israel, who tried to, well, because of our own security things, tried to be nice to Putin in order he will not interfere in our attacks of Iranian bases. But, well, he's a great leader. And I want to say one more thing. You know, nationalism became a very bad word. Israel as a Jewish national state, as a Jewish democratic state, sounded very proudly in the 60s. But with the time, democratic became not a value because of postmodernism, and really all the values are equally important and all this nonsense. And Jewish state, who needs national states? We in Europe overcame it. One of the French leaders were telling me 20 years ago, only because you Jews insist to have a Jewish state, we have problem with the Palestinians. Be a state of all the people and there will be no problem. So nationalism became like a bad word. But in fact, what happens now between Russia and Ukraine is the same. It's example of the worst, what is in nationalism, the imperial nationalism, the base of this great empire. dictator tries to use nationals to unite his people for this barbaric war. And the best ones is the nationals, like Ukraine, which wants to be Ukrainian democratic state. People are fighting for their freedom. Their national pride gives them a lot of strength. And so really, and Putin and Zelensky, Putin shows what are the dangers of nationals, and Zelensky brings back the proud meeting of the world nationals. By the way, that's why I think he's very important for us, for Zionists, who are insisting that freedom and nationals goes together.
We have a question from Marty about anti-Semitism in Ukraine and whether the kind of anti-Semitism separate from Russia and how Putin may exploit this, what the situation for Jews living in Ukraine is like.
Well, first of all, the way how Putin is using these terms like Nazis and anti-Semitic, Zelensky is a bad Jew, he recently said. So it's cynical, demagogical, and it's laughable. Because let's go this way. Of course, the history of Ukraine has awful pages for Jews. The pogroms of Bogdan Khmelnytsky, it's like the worst thing in our history, one of the many bad things in our history. And in the times of Petlura, and of course Shoah. But and when I'm challenged, I'm saying, "What? Don't you see what was there?" I say, "Where you're from? You are from France. I'm from Provence. Go and see how the whole Jewish communities were destroyed by crusaders. You're from Switzerland. Go and look how the whole Jewish communities were burnt alive the years of plague. So if you go to Spain and see that Ferdinand and Isabella are the biggest national heroes, and correctly so because they liberated them from Muslim world, but they exiled half of Jewish population of the world, simply exiled. So if we Jews want to build our relation with the people based on the past, we should better move to the other planet. Because there are Jewish sources who are saying that you have to judge people by what they are today. And if you say, what is Ukraine today? You know, there is such tests of the depths of the anti-Semitic prejudices. And there are special old prejudices that are checked with the people. Ukraine has one of the most non-anti-Semitic societies, by far higher than Spain, than Greece, than Poland, than one of the most non-anti-Semitic societies. They say, but they have neo-Nazis. You know how many neo-Nazis parties are today represented in the parliaments? In Ukraine, they tried, they didn't get 1% of vote, they didn't get 1/10% of vote. They're non-existent in political life. And the last thing, whereas in the absolutely free elections, it was a very tough competition. The one who is openly Jewish, who openly demonstrates his love of Israel, and he is becoming the president. We have some political leaders who were playing down their Jewishness and then said, well, now we didn't realize that we are Jewish. We are not speaking, and we don't mean about the Jews who converted, okay, they have the right to convert, and then they say, yeah, but I have Jewish blood. Here is absolutely openly proud Jew who's elected by Ukrainian people as their president, and if elections are today, he will probably get 98%. So of course, Putin says, but he is not a good Jew. So it's very welcome that President Putin is concerned about the quality of our nation. Yeah? But I believe that he is the one that Ukrainians can be proud of their president who united them, and we Jews should be proud of the president who really unites all the free world in this struggle.
I want to give an opportunity. I know you're surrounded by a group of legislators from around the United States who you'll be having a further discussion with after the webinar, but just want to give an opportunity to see if there are any questions in the room. that anyone wants to share? And as well, Natan, if you have advice you can share in light of the new U.S. Strategy, unprecedented in many respects, but as a strategy, it still has to be implemented. So if you have advice how to sort of turn the strategy into a more operational movement as you all are envisioning it, Cam.
Well, you want to start from questions or want to start from answers?
Yeah, thank you for those remarks. I've made lots of notes and ideas. Some of the things you said are really profound. And the quote that's going to stick with me is "provide courage." I'm glad to tell you that all but one of the states that's represented in the group here today has adopted IRA already in our states, including Kentucky, and I'm proud Kentucky's done that. What can we do next?
Well, definition is the only definition. You have now to implement it. And if you go to the universities in your states, you'll find out how difficult it is to implement it. Because people prefer to fight anti-Semitism based on their political position. The anti-Semitism, that's the other camp. And it doesn't help. Why? It doesn't help because then it's simply, if people from the left are attacking some congressman on the right, for anti-Semitism, it's only good for him. For that left hates me, so please vote for me, and vice versa.
Right.
Only if people on the left will look at the anti-Semitism, the new anti-Semitism, which is made on the left, or people on the right will look at the old anti-Semitism. People on the right will look at this crowd who shouts, "Jews will not replace us," and will not say, "Okay, there are good people from both sides," because this is anti-Semitism. And people on the left will go to these campuses who demand BDS, boycott Israel, and say that is anti-Semitism. You're in my camp, but you're anti-Semite. Only then we can be really successful. That's very important understanding. We have to get it out of this political discourse. It's not part of our political disagreements. So yeah, it's great. It's very important that your states follow this definition. Now try to see if institutions inside your state are following it.
I just made a note, follow up with governor and state agencies for implementation, because one of the definitions is to direct state agencies, and the governor's is telling the executive branch to enforce or to have policies in place that support the definition. That's on my to-do list.
Okay. So questions, answers.
What are some of the challenges for immigrants that are moving to Israel and getting relocated? I would imagine if they're living in a place, let's say Ukraine, and they have to walk out, give up their home, and they've got to come here and relocate. What are the financial and other challenges?
Can you just introduce yourself?
Yeah, Briggs Hobson from Mississippi.
Okay. Well, first of all, every immigration is challenging. So you Americans also know that how the waves of immigrants start from something very, very challenging and then improve their life slowly. From this point, Israel is a unique place. Why? I'll give you an example of my aliyah, well, not my personal, but we were debating how many will come when the Iron Curtain will fall, and the establishment of Israeli crashes was speaking about tens of thousands. We were insisting 400,000. And we tried to drill this figure into the minds of Jewish leaders. In fact, when Iron Curtain fell, 400,000 came in the first 2 years, and then they came more than 1 million. And so imagine what it means, 1 million Jews for the country, which then was 7 million. It's, well, it's like in America, probably 25 million. So, and there was a lot of problems. I will speak in a moment about the problems, and we tried to create kind of self-help and like trade unions, and we decided to go to politics and to create a new immigrants party, and that helped a lot. But with all those problems, one generation after it, 20 years after this, average income of the family of new immigrant from Russia is higher than of new immigrant. And then Then it was such a problem. Suddenly the number of doctors doubled. And who knows that they have real diplomas? We had to fight to make authorities to recognize their diplomas. They're saying from Siberia, from Sverdlovsk, Novosibirsk, who knows? They bribed people, they bought these diplomas. Who knows that there are good diplomas? Today, everybody's crying because they are retiring. Suddenly, there are tens of thousands of good doctors who retire. But the country doubled the number of doctors and engineers, and there was a lot of competition and friction. And in the end, it's such a successful integration. Why? Because in spite of all the frictions which exist, and in every way, the country believed that that's one of its main purposes, that it was created in order to gather exiles. And every Jew in the world knows that this country belongs to him or her as much as it belongs to those who live in it. So that was the meaning of the law of return. You decide to make Aliyah, nobody, not the government, not minister can stop you. You by law you have. Now, nevertheless, the challenges. First of all, to work in our Aliyah, it was to work by profession. First of all, your profession is not exactly adjusted. You're coal engineer, and there is no coal in this country. Or you are in high tech, and that's kind of high tech, but you almost don't speak English, and so it does work. So first of all, the fact that many new immigrants who were engineers there, and because that was our way of survival, to be very good engineers, and so now have to start from cleaning the streets. That's psychological, it's a big challenge. And the other thing was in our Aliyah, people were coming without any money. You could, from Soviet Union, couldn't bring, you didn't have anything, but also what you had, you couldn't bring. So if you're a senior citizen and you can work on you are dependent on welfare, and there is no way that you can buy an apartment or you can rent an apartment. And so you need social housing. And we had like a line for 20 years for for people who need social housing. And somehow it was solved with the time, but it was a very painful problem in the first years. It can become a problem a little bit now, but though now it's back. And the third thing, of course, many Jews are absolutely assimilated, and some of them are halachically not Jewish. And the society is not really built for this. And here wasn't still is our big battle, how to make society more open to those who are halachically non-Jewish. That's one of the ideological problems which we deal with. But altogether, they say, if you look in the perspective of 20 years, you'll find out there is no such an example in America or in any other country of such a successful Aliyah with such a big percentage of people of the local population are coming, and they're already in the life of this generation, not their children. They themselves in the end are so successful.
That is an incredible note, Natan, to end on, because of all the legacies you leave behind. Certainly what the Russian and Ukrainian and the Aliyah in Israel has done to transform Israeli society in so many different sectors, how it has made Israel a stronger, wiser, more musical society is really one of the great legacies that hopefully will continue to build upon with other immigrant communities. I want to give you, Gal, the last word from the panelists. I know you all are continuing your conversation. We're so grateful to have Cam with us and your resources in this new movement. Yigal.
So thank you. I just want to say something personal. When I joined CAM, I learned that Natan is the chairman of our advisory board of CAM. And I felt the chills in my body, not only because every single Jewish person in Israel knows Natan, how hero he is, but also in my personal life, my grandparents grew up in Sweden, And they were telling me stories of Avital, Natan's wife, when Natan was in prison. She went all around the world to raise friends and funds to Natan's release, and she stayed in my grandparents' home, and that's what I grew up with. So I just want to say personally, and also on behalf of CAM, thank you so much, Natan, for everything you've done and you're doing, and you're being a great ambassador for the Jewish people in the world.
Thank you. Yeah. My wife stayed in your grandparents' home, but I have to say, all over the world, I hear from the people, oh, your wife slept in my house.
All right, I'm not going to touch that one.
You're very kind. I was sitting and waiting and she got very
what I am going to say is, on behalf of all of the America-Israel Friendship League, we want to thank our visiting delegation from NCSL and enjoy your continued conversation with our national and global hero, Natan Sharansky. We want to invite everyone to come back for our webinar. We're doing one this Sunday on the theme of Independence Weekend. We're going to do barbecue. So whether you like Texas Pit, we're going to have a Texas Pit barbecue, or if you like a la Aish, we'll have someone from Israel and sharing recipes that are good for the whole family, regardless of what you're going to throw on the grill. So come join us on Sunday, July 2nd. Everyone have a wonderful time in Israel for our delegation, and for those celebrating independence, whether it's for the American holiday or just for the people who are fighting for freedom and independence around the world in Russia and Ukraine. Our thoughts are with them, and we hope everyone here will have a great week.